Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. The regular season is over, and at this point, the postseason, which we were not a participant in, is also over. Our divisional rival Chicago White Sox were the 2022 World Series champions. We are going to slow down the pace of our new episodes just a little bit for the next week or so. Absolutely appreciate everyone who's been watching and commenting and subscribing and liking these videos. Thank you so much, and glad that some of you are enjoying what we're putting out there. With the recent release of OOTP 23, though, seen a lot of descriptions of some real wacky issues happening with the draft pools and just massive amounts of talent coming on and very rapid player development of that talent that is kind of skewing leagues. So we're going to try to slow things down until a public non-beta patch kind of addressing some of those issues is released. Because we really like this sim, we really like this save. We feel like we made good progress in this first season and don't want to just blow it all up and start all over again in a couple of weeks. But because of that, we're going to kind of slow down the pace of episodes for a little bit here and probably focus on a little more detail. So those of you who want the nitty-gritty details of how we're thinking about things may actually enjoy these next few episodes more. If you just kind of want us to get to the point and just show you the highlights, maybe these episodes are going to be a little more boring, but apologize for that. But if you see fewer videos over the next week or so, it's really just waiting for a more stable version of OOTP 23 that has addressed some of the issues that could start to have the sim go off into a weird direction if they're not fixed and we continue simming ahead too quickly. But before we get too far into this episode, wanted to revisit something that we just kind of threw in at the end of our last episode and have gotten a little bit of interaction on. It had to do with the request from Nicky Lopez for us to start a charity, which is a storyline that happens frequently in the game. And I've never really given these things all that much thought. But as you know from the last episode, I agreed to start the charity, which was the most expensive option since we had some money. As I showed in the last episode, that ended up costing us $16 million, I believe, to start the charity, which is fine. We had extra money. But the one thing that I didn't notice until recently, and you can go back in the last episode, the season recap, which is episode 7, and see this for yourself if you want around the 24-minute mark, is that we spent that money. It obviously impacted the money we have available, taking it from over $14 million to nothing. It made Nicky Lopez happy, but it also impacted our market size, fan loyalty, and fan interest. It makes sense that it would have an impact, but it's just not something I've ever really looked at before. But as I said in the last episode, if you kind of start at the 24-minute mark and watch for about a minute and a half, you'll see that our market size moves following the processing of that starting of a charity. The market size moves up a little bit. It stays below average, but it looks like this slider definitely moves up. Fan loyalty moves from poor to below average, and then fan interest goes from 52 to 62. I don't know how long these effects are going to last, and of course it makes sense that the game is sophisticated enough that investing money into the community like that may have an impact on your market size, your fan loyalty, and your fan interest, but never really looked at it before, and it seems like that storyline at least is something that can actually impact the finances of your team, not just in the money you spend right now, but potentially going forward by impacting some of the other aspects of your franchise. Just thought that was an interesting thing, maybe intuitive to more experienced people that happens, but I had never really looked at it before. So feel even better that we spent a little money investing into that charity, given that it's given us a boost in some of the metrics that are going to be impacting our team, our attendance at our games, and ultimately, hopefully, impacting and driving us towards a bigger budget and player payroll over time. So with that said, we've got two primary goals for this episode. One is to just kind of sim ahead through awards season, see if we won any gold gloves, and most importantly and most optimistically, see whether our young star Bobby Witt Jr. ends up winning the Rookie of the Year award. As I mentioned when we held him down at the start of the season several episodes ago, you can see he only ended up playing 130 games at the major league level, but he did have 32 homers, 87 ribbies, 119 OPS plus, and 4.5 WAR, which is the most among all rookies, as I'll show you shortly. So I think he's a strong candidate, but with the delay in his service time, you can see we had him for this year, and then we will have him for the next 2 years at $700,000, and then we will have 4 arbitration years available. So we essentially effectively manipulated his service time to get major league control of him for 7 years. But with the new CBA, if a player wins a Rookie of the Year award, I believe that extension, even if you have manipulated their service time, is supposed to shrink back. So it'll be very interesting to see, one, if Bobby Witt wins Rookie of the Year, which hopefully he will, whether it's all programmed in the game to kind of shrink back the amount of time that we would actually have control of him. Would be kind of awesomely cool if they've programmed that in, but that's a pretty small part of the new CBA. Not a programmer, so I have no idea how difficult or how easy it is to reflect that in the code. Would think it's probably just some if-then statements using my 1980s programming lingo, but obviously that is up for the developers to have figured out rather than me, but going to monitor that going forward. And then in addition to kind of going through award season, the other thing we're going to want to do is just kind of figure out our team's salary situation before getting into arbitration. We don't even have the arbitration players available yet. That'll happen in the next day or two since the World Series just finished. But going to actually kind of figure out which one of these players we want to kind of keep around and on the 40-man roster, and who it just makes sense over the next week or two to either waive and designate for assignment, outright release, and or try to trade to hopefully save a little bit more money to have to spend on players that we really want going forward. And we've simmed ahead one day and now are in the off-season. Evan Longoria, Whit Merrifield, option decisions needed. John Sherman, good job as far as our team record. Doesn't think we upgraded right field. He's not feeling too confident that we're going to make it to the playoffs in the next few seasons. That said, he's still happy with our performance. So he wants us to sign Evan Longoria. Yeah, sorry, John. We're not going to give him $13 million. So once again, some of the goals are just a little bit wacky. Although Longoria is popular, wants us to acquire a hometown player. Maybe we can do that. And I guess the progress we made financially has him very inspired. Wants us to increase attendance for the Royals from 29,000 to 36,000 a game. Definitely going to have to cut ticket prices and put a even better product on the field to have any chance of achieving that. So we may upset him with some of the goal achievement this coming season, but hopefully we'll be playing better than close to 500 ball and actually competing for the playoffs. The good news is our new budget is bigger, so the focus we had on our finances and improving attendance last year seems to help. The budget is up to 154 million. I believe we were at 142 million last year. Yeah, so a $12 million increase to the budget is certainly not immaterial for a team like the Royals. So that is pretty exciting progress, and it's going to open up a fair amount of money for us to potentially spend in free agency, especially after we potentially move on from Longoria and possibly Whit Merrifield, and then also make some other decisions ahead of arbitration on the 40-man roster and maybe trimming things down there a little bit too. Top prospect list, nobody on the team. Obviously, our three best prospects in terms of Witt Jr., Melendez, and Prado all played in the majors this past season. So the cupboard is a bit bare for us in terms of our prospects, but hopefully with some of the trades of the veteran players we made over the course of the season, some of the young players we picked up will ultimately fill in and help kind of supplement our farm system over time. And Evan Longoria obviously has had a exceptional major league career, but at this point, age 37, kind of a league average type hitter, a league average-ish defensive third baseman. Great personality traits, but $13 million for the Kansas City Royals is an absolute luxury, so we are going to void the last contract year for him. Whit Merrifield, a little bit more difficult of a decision. His cost would be just half of Longoria's, $6.5 million. Longtime Royal, pretty versatile defensively, and outfield is still a weakness for us. Both offensively and defensively, and he can play a competent defensive outfield, especially in left field, and I'd say he's competent in right also. Can also play second base for us. Love the fact that he's a really good contact hitter and he avoided Ks, but he's going to be 34 by the time next season starts. We're going to let him go. It doesn't mean that we might not take him back, but I think there's an absolute chance that we could get him back for less than $6.5 million. So we're going to void that contract year with Merrifield also. And the end result of that, of course, is that now we've got a lot more money for free agents and extensions going forward. And back to the ownership goals. I know that there's a lot of debate among some as to whether you should play with the goals or not. Obviously, not playing with some of these wacky goals is kind of a cleaner experience that just lets you be the general manager and or manager of the team. To me, I just look at it as a little more volatility, a little more unpredictability in how the sim goes. In real life, you're obviously going to have that if you're in any job, including a management position with a Major League Baseball team. There's going to be some wacky demands from your bosses at time to time that in different opinions across the organization in how the team should proceed in terms of who to sign, how to focus on profits versus success on the field, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I like to keep them on just to give a little flavor to the game and a little unpredictability and volatility that gives me some additional challenges to respond to. And a lot of times if I don't complete the goals, which will happen quite frequently, kind of, puts a little tension between me and the owner and makes things a little more challenging for me. Looking at the new goals that are out there, definitely think playing close to 500 ball is certainly a very reasonable goal for next year. We were close to that this past season, and our goal is to get better in the off season, so that's clearly a fine goal. Would like to hit more home runs, and if I'm able to beef up our outfield, I think we could certainly get there from 14th. We've already said that we're not going to extend Longoria. I guess theoretically, if he's looking for $1 million or $2 million rather than 13, we were going to have to pay him. Maybe we could re-sign him, but certainly not a key priority for us. Can try to acquire a hometown player over time. can try to increase attendance over the next several seasons to get to 36,200 and then build up the team to reach the playoffs, well, that's the total goal, so fine with that. In terms of the attendance, given that we have had that bump in fan interest, going to actually still cut just a bit to 1750. So that's a just 3% decrease in ticket price, but the hope would be to sell a lot more season tickets, and hopefully with the increased interest and slightly lower ticket prices to also ultimately have certainly be in the low 30,000 a game in terms of attendance next year, which would be a pretty good number for Kansas City. As you can see, last year averaging 29,000 a game, we were close to 2.4 million, which is as strong as the Royals were since their World Series championship in the season after the World Series championship. And now that we're technically in the off season, can see all of our arbitration eligible players. You can see we've got a ton of pitchers available. Probably going to bring back all of the starters. Certainly could be some relievers that we move on from, and then we'll have some interesting decisions to make with the likes of Hunter Renfro, Jacoby Jones, even Ryan O'Hearn. Going to be some interesting decisions with some of the position players as well. Obviously, we declined the option on Longoria. We declined the option on Whit Merrifield for $6.5 million, so we're certainly not going to submit a $18.9 million qualifying offer for him. And then we've got a few decisions with some minor league free agents that we'll spend some time thinking about now. And since there's only a handful of minor league free agents, we'll just kind of walk you through how I think about those. Sam Freeman, 35-year-old relief pitcher, unmotivated, not a great personality. He's not going to be coming back to us at the AAA level, unfortunately. Emmanuel Rivera, 26-year-old, plays third base. Looks like he could be a competent major league hitter if we needed him in a pinch. Could play first or third for us, which are actually two of the positions that we're deepest at right now, with Witt Jr. at third and Prado at first, both rookies last year. And then we've also got Alex Bohm and Vinny Pasquantino, who can play first and or third. So it is a position of strength for us. So he would really just be there in a severe injury situation for us. Still has 2 option years left, so happy to bring him back on a minor league contract if he is willing to come back, which we'll find out. Domingotopia is probably someone who we are going to be moving on from. You can see he has a major league contract right now. Pretty average arm, if that, with 2 average at best pitches, not a lot of stamina, 31 years old. No real reason for us to bring him back with a major league contract, certainly. If we can convince him to come back with the minors, maybe. Gabriel Cancel, 25-year-old, soon to be 26-year-old first baseman. Doesn't look like he's ever going to have a great major league bat. Very versatile, which is useful if there's injuries down in the minors, but lacks initiative, low work ethic. No real reason to bring him back. Angelo Castellano, again, never going to have a major league bat. A respectable defensive player, almost 28 years old. Was in Double-A for us last year. Probably would like to open up spots in the minor league system for younger guys than him. Brad Zunica, 27-year-old, strikes out a ton, never going to make much contact. Hit 104 in Double-A for us last year in just 48 at-bats. Definitely time to move on from him. As you can tell, we didn't spend a ton of time cleaning up the entire minor league system when we started this sim back in March and April of the 2022 season. But this is a good opportunity for us to kind of clean up the minor league system a little bit in terms of the talent and personality that we have there. Colton Brewer, a reliever, 30 years old, kind of a below average prospect. Spent some time with Boston at the major league level in the past. At 30 years old, a guy who we had in high A ball this past season. We will move on from Colton. Also, Jose Cuas, similar, a 28-year-old reliever, played in high A ball for us and low A ball for us this past year. No reason to keep him in the organization at that age. And then Ryan Eads, like that he's got a good work ethic, but he's going to be 31 years old. Doesn't really have major league stuff, movement, or control. Does have 4 decent major league pitches, good stamina. He's a starter. I'm actually going to keep him around just because sometimes it can be a little difficult to find a competent starting pitcher in the minors. He did start, as you can see, 3 games for us in high A last year. Obviously, he's not, a long-term member of the organization, but is someone who can just eat some innings for us if we don't have enough competent starters at one of our minor league teams, willing to potentially keep him on board to do that. And now turning on to the Major League salary arbitration eligible players. Won't go through each of these in excruciating detail with you, but we'll just highlight a couple. Starting pitcher Brad Keller, 27-year-old, tied for the league lead in games started, pitched the most innings on our team with a 101 ERA plus 95 FIP minus, so pretty much almost by definition a league average type of pitcher. But happy to have him back next year as a 27-year-old for most of the season. Says he's looking for $5 million. If we can potentially sign him to an extension for a couple of years, we would do that. He's probably not going to go for it. How long does he have till? Yeah, this is his last arbitration year. So we'll see if we can buy out a year or two of free agency, but we're not going to do it at a crazy number, so he's probably not going to go for it. And Keller's looking for $5.5 million a year. As you can remember from the last screen, the arbitration estimate on our side was $5 million for him. We're going to see if we can perhaps just offer him $5 million a year for 3 years and actually make that last year for us a team option in case we're really able to bulk up our pitching staff. I don't think he's going to go for this, but if we could buy out a couple of his free agency years for a solid major league starter at $5 million a year, I'd happily do that. Yeah, and he doesn't really want a long-term deal, so that's fine. This will be potentially his last year with us before he hits free agency. We'll see if we can bring him back for next year for the $4.8 million. Kind of a little trick, which I'm sure many are aware of, but sometimes, actually pretty frequently, you can sign people before arbitration for even a little less than what the arbitration estimate is, and sometimes significantly less than what they are looking for. So yeah, he's gonna think about that offer at $4.8 million. So that'll probably save us a few $100,000 potentially with what he might have gotten in arbitration. So if we can get Keller locked up for next year, good addition to ensure that one of our key starters is back with us at a hopefully reasonable salary. And Hunter Renfro was brutal for us after we picked him up when we traded away Hunter Dozier. Did hit 7 homers and 160 at-bats, but a 175 batting average, 62 OPS plus, minus .7 WAR. He's looking for some big money next year. You can see other than really good home run power, which we could use, but he just doesn't make great contact, not great at avoiding Ks. Over the course of his major league career, has been a below average hitter if you kind of look at OPS plus or WRC plus and even negative WAR over the course of his major league career. So $8 million for him in arbitration seems like an absolute luxury for a team like ours. So we are going to look to see if we can get anything for him in trade, and if not, we are just going to not make him an offer, send him off to free agency. Similar to what we were talking about with Whit Merrifield, could certainly see a scenario where he's back on the team with us as maybe a fourth outfielder if his demands are less when he hits free agency, but don't see any real reason to lock him up beforehand. And we did actually get a couple offers for Renfro. Going to take a look at some of the players here. You can see nothing exceptional. Antonio Senzatella looks like probably the best opportunity out there, but his contract is getting pretty high for the next few years for kind of a borderline starter, given that his curveball and his changeup, neither of them is all that great. Probably more than we can afford to take on. If the Rockies were willing to keep a ton of his contract, maybe that works for us, but doubt they would do that. But we'll take a look and see if there is any options here to get a little value, given that we're not going to make an offer to Renfro in arbitration. And I'm actually intrigued by a couple of the guys that the Astros offered. Jermaine Palacios, 26-year-old second baseman, never going to hit much at the major league level, but he's pretty versatile defensively, can basically play any position in the infield, and he's not great, but he's competent defensively, good teammate, and he's got 3 option years left for the minors, and kind of the one hole, or we have many holes on the team, but one hole that I'm kind of concerned about right now is kind of a infielder who can play second or short to back us up behind Nico Horner and then Nicky Lopez at short. We don't really have a great middle infielder. Not that Palacios is going to be great as a kind of utility infielder, but certainly I like the defensive versatility. His bat's never going to be great, but it's not horrid. He could be a good, potential backup to Horner and Lopez, or more optimally, kind of the backup to the backup of Horner and Lopez, if we can bring on someone who's even better defensively with a little bit more of a bat to kind of supplement those two in the infield. And then Palacios could, over the next couple of seasons, maybe be the first guy that we would bring up from AAA if we had any injuries to the second base and shortstop. I think he could fit that role for us really interestingly. And then Jojonce Torres, reliever, 27 years old, also has 3 option years left, so somebody that we could certainly be moving back and forth. Really good stuff, good movement. Excellent fastball and slider, decent changeup. Doesn't have great control, so he's going to walk a lot of people, and he did walk 42 and 56 in the third innings at AAA last year. But a fly ball pitcher with pretty good movement, decent velocity, didn't give up too many home runs, only 3 and 56 in the third innings. So I think my main priority is going to be to bring on Palacios, but if there's a way to kind of get Torres into the deal also for Renfro, we'll certainly do that. And we were able to piece together a deal with Renfro, with the Astros for Renfro. We had to add in Luis Barroso, who is, a A-level pitcher, 24 years old. He can potentially start, but doesn't seem like he's ever going to make it at the major league level. And we were able to, in doing that, get both Palacios and Torres, as well as a little bit of cash from the Astros. So I like the trade. We weren't going to sign Renfro. Palacios potentially gives us some organizational depth, is a very versatile utility infielder for us. And Torres is a potential arm out of the bullpen for us down the line. So like the trade, also like bringing on a little bit of cash from the Astros to keep the budget moving in the right direction. So we are going to go ahead and complete that trade. and that will open up even more money for us with the $8 million that had been budgeted for Renfro and arbitration now off our books. Nico Horner is going to be another one of the interesting arbitration decisions for us. Obviously, after trading for him from the Cubs, want to bring him back. You can see he's expected to make about $4 million next year, followed by $6.5 and $8.5 through arbitration. We did try to extend him when we first brought him on from the Cubs and weren't able to do that. Great presence in the clubhouse, popular with the teammates, high leader, work ethic, and intelligence. And then he obviously had a nice season for us, batting .283, 98 OPS plus, 3.5 WAR on the season. Very good defensive second baseman for us, with a decent enough bat, plus contact, plus it avoiding strikeouts, even though he doesn't have a ton of power. And now that we have a little money available in the budget, we're going to try to sign him before going to arbitration. Going to see if he's potentially interested in a longer term extension with us. Obviously says he only wants the 1 year right now, but we'll put something a little front loaded on the table with Nico and see if maybe we can buy out a couple years of free agency, and have him for hopefully all of his 20s with the Royals organization. And we kind of ended up going the opposite of a front-loaded contract and just something a little lower than he would have been expected to get in arbitration, with higher contract numbers 2 years out, $10 million option, team option for the final year. I don't think he's going to go for this. I'm definitely being cheap in terms of what I'm offering him, but trying to be cognizant of the fact that I'm running the Royals now rather than the Yankees, who I was in the last sim I did here. Actually, he's going to think about it. That surprises me a little bit because he was looking for about 4.5 this year, and then was expected to get up to 6.5 and 8.5 in the last 2 arbitration seasons, and then presumably would be looking for more than that as a free agent. So if we can lock up Horner for the next 5 years, and kind of especially having that team option, if that $10 million does end up being something painful for us, I'd be happy to have him on board for 5 years, $37 million. We'll see whether we can get it done. But he's a competent bat and a really good defensive second baseman. I think if we can get Nico Horner locked up alongside Nicky Lopez and kind of have the middle infield settled with very good defensive players who are not horrible offensively, I think that's a win for the Royals. And Ryan O'Hearn is another decision. Didn't even have him on the major league team at all this past year. He did hit 13 homers in 224 at-bats in AAA, batted .281 with a 124 OPS plus, but a average-ish major league bat without any real defensive position. Low leadership. Gonna try to see if we can get anything for him in trade. Otherwise, since he was in the minors, you can see already kind of defaults to no offer, and don't think we'll be bringing back the longtime member of the organization. So we'll see if we can get anything for him in trade or not. And we did get a variety of offers for O'Hearn. Some of them are very difficult offers, like Scott Kingery and his very expensive contract that the Phillies have. But we'll take a look at what's out there. Maybe there's something to be done that will make us better and not add a lot of expense into our budget. And from my perspective, there's really not a ton of great options here, kind of looking into the players, the salary situations, the whether or not players have any options to go to the minors left. Was kind of most tempted by Harold Castro, as I mentioned, kind of a backup second baseman. Shortstop is the biggest weakness, not the biggest weakness, one of several weaknesses we have right now at the major league level. He's a competent defensive second baseman, and you could play him at short in a pinch. The issue is that he's just he's going to make about $1,200,000, $1,300,000, $4,000,000, $5,000,000 next year. I mean, he does have the one option year left, but I don't know that I want to be paying that much for him. I don't see a huge upgrade compared to the guy that we just traded for when we made our last deal. So I think I'm just going to let O'Hearn leave us, but not going to take on any of these players or these contracts. I don't see where any of those really move our organization forward, unfortunately. And obviously what I was just referring to was the trade of Hunter Renfro for Palacios is the player that I just don't think we're getting. I just as soon have Palacios up. I think he's got a better glove and a different bat. Not as good in contact, not as good as avoiding Ks, but actually has more power, home run power, and a little bit better eye discipline. And we've got 3 option years left with him, so I just don't think it makes sense to bring on the contract there. And another arbitration decision has to do with Jacoby Jones. He was up with us in the majors for a couple months this year when Michael A. Taylor was out with his injuries. We don't have a great defensive backup for Michael A. Taylor at center field. Actually, we don't even have a good defensive backup for Michael A. Taylor in center field. So Jacoby Jones is definitely a solid option there for us. Just doesn't hit much. Not a great personality to have. If Taylor gets hurt, which certainly seems possible, we're going to have to find a better defensive center fielder to be a backup for him. And quite honestly, what we might need to find really is someone who can actually start over Michael Taylor and kind of turn him into our 4th outfielder and a great defensive substitute for us. But given, Jones's lack of hitting and a personality in the game that isn't great and his fragile injury proneness, I think he's another guy that will shop, see if we can get any offers at all for him. And if not, probably going to be moving on from Jacoby Juicy J. Jones as well. But there's a lot of options here actually to consider, so that's interesting. Maybe there will be something real interesting. Eduardo Rodriguez from the Tigers. There's a great pitcher with a big contract. The issue is that he's coming off of a partially torn UCL, so I wonder what he's going to look like after that. He didn't pitch great for the Tigers before he got injured. That would be a risky move for us to take on that big contract, not knowing exactly what he's going to look like post-injury. But a lot of options for us to kind of dig through here at least. Wow, the Tigers just looking to slash payroll. Javi Baez also on the block. That would be real interesting, but we've already kind of invested in Nicky Lopez, who's younger, and say a pretty similar broad defensive profile, so also a good defensive shortstop and more cost-effective. But looks like we may have some interesting options to think about with Jones here if we do decide to trade him away. And I think we've found our target. It is with the Tigers, but it's not Rodriguez or Baez, but it's Ryan Kreidler, the 24-year-old shortstop. Kind of an average-ish major league bat, at least according to our scout, but very versatile defensively, can play a competent second, third, and short. That middle infield backup position is one that I'm really concerned about now, and I think that Kreidler would be a real good addition there to the major league team for us as someone who still could develop a little bit over time and at the very least be a real solid backup to Horner at second base and Lopez at shortstop. Obviously would love to have a better defender, but he's still certainly competent to play shortstop and I'd say, a good defensive second baseman. So I think we're going to try to build something around Kreidler. And I think we found a decent deal with the Tigers. We also have to add in Daniel Vitriago, relief pitcher, who can maybe start in a pinch, but doesn't look like he's ever going to develop into a long-term major leaguer. It's not easy to give up Jones because, as I said, we're opening up another hole on the major league level where we don't have a competent defensive center field backup, which is an issue. Hopefully that's something we can figure out in free agency or through trades in the rest of the offseason. But bringing on Kreidler, as I've already talked about, I think would be a good move. And then Daniel Cabrera, outfield is a weakness for us now, and I don't know that Daniel Cabrera, with a pretty average batting profile, is going to fix that for us. But certainly someone who could be a fourth or fifth outfielder for us over the next few years. He has 3 option years left, so happy to bring him on as someone who could potentially help us out a little bit in the outfield if and when we have some injuries at the major league level over the next few seasons. So obviously there's still several other players that we need to figure out what we're going to do in arbitration. If I come up with anything interesting, I'll pop back in and kind of let you know if we've made a longer term contract to somebody, but don't want to bore you with all the excruciating details. Hopefully going through those last few players at least let you know a little bit about my thought process around some of these things. Whether it's useful or not, I don't know, but it is what it is. All right, so we've ended up making 1-year offers to Bubic, Singer, Barlow, Clark, Stalmont, and Cam Gallagher also. The big decision for us is Amir Garrett. Did a great job for us as a lefty one-out guy last year, 20 2/3 innings, 1.74 ERA, 183 batting average against, struck out 30 batters. Filled that role incredibly well. The issue is he only pitched 20 2/3 innings for us. And he's looking for about $2.8 million. It seems a little bit luxurious for us to have a guy who's going to pitch 20 or 30 innings getting paid that kind of money. I like him in that he is a lot more effective against left-handers than he is against right-handers, so there's definitely value there in having a guy like him on the team, but it seems like a bit high of a contract, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think I'm going to offer him something, maybe try to offer him a couple years to buy out his first year or two of potential free agency. But if we can't do it at our level, I think we'll just bring him back for 1 year and then probably move on our separate ways after the 2023 season. So we're going to offer Garrett a 3-year deal, averaging $2.6 million a year. So 3 years, $7.8 million, option for us in the final season. He's looking for 3.1 almost for this 1 year. So I don't think he's going to accept this deal. Well, maybe he will. We'll submit the offer to him, see if we can get him locked up as our lefty specialist for the next 3 years. May prove to be a little bit of a luxury for us, but the contract is not so egregious if he does agree to it that we wouldn't be able to get out of it without too much pain. So if we can keep him on board, great. So I feel like we're kind of cleaned up as far as arbitration eligible players. You can see we've made offers to most everybody except Ryan O'Hearn, traded away a couple people that we didn't want to make offers to or we could turn into something more useful. Made a couple offers to our minor league free agents. Let Whit Merrifield go, let Evan Longoria go. Going to let Lorenzo Kane go and Chad Green also, but I'm going to take a quick look at those two. Lorenzo Kane could be our backup center fielder. Obviously has a history with the Royals. I think the contract that he's looking for just might be too much. Yeah, we're not going to be paying him close to $11 million a year, so definitely let him hit free agency also. And then Chad Green, who came over from the Yankees, did a nice job for us as a closer, saved 17 of the 29 games he pitched in for us. Have a feeling he's looking for more than we're going to be willing to spend also. Yeah, $10 million a year for Chad Green. So some teams could afford that, but I don't think the Kansas City Royals are one of them. And with that, I think we will call this episode a wrap. I know at the beginning of the episode I talked about potentially going through the season awards, but I think we'll save that for our next episode since we're only at November 8th. And we spent a little bit of time kind of walking through our thought process around arbitration and minor league free agencies, made a couple trades to bolster the team. When I come back in our next episode, definitely we'll go through all of the upcoming awards, and then are also going to spend some time on what the roster actually looks like in terms of salaries, and see if there are any more players here who are on auto renewal contracts that we potentially want to get off of our books by either trading them away or just waiving and DFAing them, and hopefully having them clear waivers and get out of having a minor league contract with them. So going to spend some time on our thought process around those topics in our next episode. And then also, as I've been teasing, hopefully find out whether Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be the AL Rookie of the Year for 2022 or not. So until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.